is Adil. Today I shall be discussing a new topic for you, that is antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone is also known as vasopressin. It is a peptide hormone and it contains 9 amino acids. As you can see here, the antidiuretic hormone itself stands for, it is against the diuresis. Diuresis means loss of excess amount of urine with the excess amount of water. We can say it is against the diuresis. It prevents the loss of water in the urine. We can say also it is the water conserving hormone. So it has given the another name, that is vasopressin. You can see the vaso means vessel. Vaso means vessel. And pressin stands for contraction. Contraction. What the vasopressin does, it results the contraction of the vessel. When there is the contraction of the vessel, it will increase the blood pressure. We will see how it increases the blood pressure, but first of all we will see where this hormone is synthesized and where it is secreted. Now let's see here. This hormone in the hypothalamus, there are some nucleus. As we know, nucleus in central nervous system is the group of cell bodies. As I can show you here, suppose I have drawn some neurons here. These are the cell bodies of neurons and these are axons. In central nervous system, the group of cell bodies is called the nucleus. And the group of axons is known as tract. Now, in the hypothalamus, there is a nucleus which is called the supraoptic nucleus. Let me write here, supraoptic nucleus. Let me make here the supraoptic nucleus. Suppose this is a group of cell bodies. So suppose supraoptic nucleus, they will give the axons and they will form a tract. And eventually they will give rise to axon terminals. And these axon terminals have given a specific name. They are called heading bodies. And you look here, in the cell bodies of supraoptic nucleus, the ADH is synthesized. Now this ADH will come through the axons, and there is a protein which helps the ADH to transfer from the hypothalamus into the neurohypophysis, that is posterior pituitary. That is known as the neurophysin. Let me write here the name, neurophycins. Neurophycins are special carrier proteins which carry the ADH hormone from the hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary, and eventually they are released from the heading bodies into the circulation. Now you need to remember, anterior to hypothalamus there are some structures which are, first structure is called the subfornical area. Let me show you here. Suppose this is the first area anterior to hypothalamus. This is the first area I am showing in the blue color. It's called, let me rub out this first. This is called the subfornical area. Subfornical area or subfornical organ. There is another area which is known as organum vasculosum of lamina terminalis. Here I will show you the another structure which is known as the organum vasculosum of lamina terminalis. Actually, these two areas, which are, or we can say these two structures, are known as the circumventricular organs. circumventricular organs. Circumventricular organs. Now, you need to remember, in the circumventricular organs, there are main receptors which are called osmoreceptors. Osmoreceptors. Now, suppose here is your osmoreceptor. This is the osmoreceptor. Suppose here is also this osmoreceptor in the circumventricular area. Whenever these osmoreceptors are stimulated, they will give the signals to the supraoptic nucleus. Whenever they are giving the signals to the supraoptic nucleus, the supraoptic nucleus get activated, and it will synthesize the ADH, or we can say it will release the ADH into the posterior pituitary. Now, what are the factors which can stimulate these osmoreceptors? Let me write here the stimulants of the osmoreceptors. Let me rub out this first. Stimulants of osmoreceptors. Stimulants. Okay. The first stimulation of the osmoreceptors is if there is severe nausea or vomiting. Severe nausea. Nausea means sensation of vomiting. When you are feeling to be vomit. Severe nausea or severe vomiting. Severe vomiting. This is the first factor or first stimulant. Second factor for the stimulation of the osmoreceptors is hyperosmolality. Hyperosmolality means whenever the blood is hypertonic. Hypertonic. What does it mean, hypertonic or hyperosmolality? Let me understand you what's meant by hypertonic. Whenever there is, we can say less water in the blood and more solutes like electrolytes like sodium, potassium, more solutes. This is called hypertonic or hyperosmolality. If the blood is hypoosmolar, or we can say if the blood is hypotonic, we can say, let me write here, if the blood is hypotonic, it means there is hypoosmolality. It means there is more water and less solutes. If we say the blood is isotonic, isotonic means the concentration of water is somewhat, we can say it is equal to the concentration of solutes. It means water is also normal and solutes are also normal. We call this isotonic, or it's the normal osmolality. The normal osmolality of the blood is 300 milliosmoles per liter. 300 milliosmoles per liter. Okay, now I told you the first stimulant of the osmoreceptors is severe nausea and vomiting. The second factor is the hyperosmolality, which means when there is the less amount of water and the increased amount of solutes in the blood. That means the hypertonic solution. Now, this was the second case when the osmoreceptors are stimulated. Now, the third stimulant to stimulate the osmoreceptor is the hypotension. hypotension. Actually, during the hypotension, there is the release of a hormone which is known as the angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2. This angiotensin 2 has the receptors in the hypothalamus. Let me show you here the angiotensin 2 receptor. It's present in the hypothalamus. It is angiotensin 2 receptor. Angiotensin 2 receptor. Now, this angiotensin 2 during the hypotension which is released, angiotensin 2 is going to the angiotensin 2 receptor and stimulates it. Now, whenever the angiotensin 2 receptor is stimulated, it again gives the signal to the supraoptic nucleus. Now, again the ADH is secreted into the blood. Now, suppose our ADH is now came into the bloodstream. Now, here the ADH is secreted. Now, here's your ADH. Now, where it will go, we will see. But first of all, I want to give you the basic review of the nephron. We know our kidneys contain a lot of nephrons. Now, here I have drawn the one nephron. The nephron has some parts. The first part is the U-shaped part, which is known as the Bowman's capsule. Now, the second part is there. Let me write. It's called PCT, proximal convoluted tubule. This one. It's called the proximal convoluted tubule. This proximal convoluted tubule is responsible to reabsorb the water. How much percent it absorbs? It absorbs around 60% water or 60-70% of water. Proximal convoluted tubule. Now, here I have shown you this is the afferent arteriole. This is efferent arteriole. Afferent arteriole. Efferent arteriole. This is efferent arteriole. Here is your glomerulus. This is the glomerulus, where actually the filtration occurs. Here is the filtration occurs. This is the filtering unit of the kidneys. Now, here, when the filtration occurs, now here you need to remember in the proximal convoluted tubules there are some water channels. Water channels. Let me show you here. Here I have drawn water channels. These water channels are also called as aquaporins. But here are the type 1 aquaporins or aquaporin 1. Aquaporin 1. Aquaporin 1. They absorb the water from the nephron. The water will enter into this vascular system. Here I have drawn the vascular system in the blue color. This vascular system is known as the vasa recta. Vasa recta. It is actually the branch of the efferent arteriole. Now you will see here. Now urine will be formed. Eventually it will be excreted here. The urine will be excreted here. One thing I want to mention here, the urine is always concentrated. Urine is concentrated. It is less diluted. Less diluted means there is less water in the urine and more solutes. Concentrated means that there is more solutes and less water. Now, the fluid which is flowing through this nephron is the diluted. It means it contains more water. Now the 60% water is reabsorbed back into the blood. Now again this fluid will enter through this structure. This is called the loop of Henle. Loop of Henle. From the loop of Henle, the fluid will enter into the another structure which is known as the DCT, distal convoluted tubule. Again, then it will eventually reach to the collecting duct. This structure is known as the collecting duct. But remember one thing, the loop of honey is not responsible to reabsorb the water back, but the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct is responsible to reabsorb the water back. How it is reabsorbing or retaining the water into the blood, we will see. It is due to the action of the ADH, which is responsible to reabsorb the water. I will show you here. The distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, they are covered by epithelial cells. Let me show you here. These are the epithelial cells, and will be also epithelial cells. These are the epithelial cells of the collecting duct, and these are the epithelial cells of distal convoluted tubule. But these cells, these epithelial cells, have given a specific name. These are called the principal cells. These are called principal cells. Now let me enlarge one principal cell here. Let me enlarge more. I have enlarged one principal cell. Now you need to remember, on the principal cells there are some receptors which are called ADH receptors. I will show you here. First of all, I want to show you here. This is the lumen. This is the lumen of collecting duct, and this surface of a cell is called the luminal surface. This will be luminal surface, and this surface is called the basolateral surface. This is a basolateral surface. Basolateral surface. Now, on the basolateral surface, there are receptors for the ADH. Let me show you here. ADH receptor. These ADH receptors are 7-pass receptors. Means this receptor will give 7 elongation and depressions. This is called the 7-pass receptor. This receptor is also known as the V2 receptor. V2 receptor. Now this, whenever the ADH will come here, this ADH from the blood, it will go through the blood, and finally it will stimulate the V2 receptor, which is present on the basolateral membrane of the principal cell. Whenever this receptor, V2 receptor, get activated, this V2 receptor is actually the G coupled. It is binding with the G protein. It's bound with the G protein. Whenever the G protein is activated, the G protein in turn activates another protein which is present in the cell membrane. Suppose here I will show. That protein is known as adenylyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase. Now, this G protein, it has activated another enzyme, that is adenylyl cyclase. What the adenylyl cyclase is gonna do is, this is converting the actually it is converting the ATP into cyclic AMP. It's converting ATP into cyclic AMP. Now, when the ATP is converted into cyclic AMP, there will be more cyclic AMP. This more cyclic AMP will activate another protein which is known as protein kinase A. Protein kinase A. Now, what the protein kinase A gonna do is, there is a nucleus, in the cells. Suppose here is the nucleus. Inside the nucleus we have DNA. Here is your DNA. This protein kinase A goes to our DNA, goes to our nucleus and stimulates the DNA. And this DNA gets converted into mRNA. Then there is the formation of protein. There is the formation of special proteins. Let me show you here these proteins. Suppose these are the proteins which are formed. These are the proteins which are formed. Now these proteins enter into the vesicles. Suppose this is the vesicle. Suppose if these proteins are already formed, then what the protein kinase gonna do is, this protein kinase A go and activate these channels, activate these activate these proteins. These are actually the aquaporins. What type of aquaporins? These are actually the aquaporin 2. Now when these aquaporin 2 channels are activated, they will be planted into the luminal membrane. Now these channels will be implanted into luminal membrane. Let me show you here. This is your luminal membrane. They will be implanted here. The first, second. These are aquaporin 2. Let me write here aquaporin 2. The aquaporin 2 channels are implanted into the luminal membrane of the collecting duct and the distal convoluted tubule. Now, whenever the fluid will come here, the water will be absorbed. The water, suppose here is the fluid which is very, we can say here is the urine which is very concentrated, or we can say which is diluted, which is very diluted. It means it has lot of water. Now these channels are responsible to reabsorb this water back into the bloodstream. Now if the water will reach here, the water will be reabsorbed into the principal cells. Now the blood is in the water is in the principal cells. From the principal cells, how the water will come into the bloodstream? Now there are other aquaporins which are always present in the we can say basolateral membrane of the principal cell. Let me show you here. This is the aquaporin 3. Again I will show you here. Here also. In the basolateral membrane, the aquaporin 3 and aquaporin 4 are implanted. These are aquaporin 3 and aquaporin 4. Now the water will enter into here. Eventually the water will be secreted into the bloodstream. Here again, water will come out. Here also, the water will come out into the blood. Here also, the water will come out into the blood. Now the water is reabsorbed back due to the action of antidiuretic hormone. The antidiuretic hormone reabsorbs the water about we can say it reabsorbs water 10%. 10% water is reabsorbed by ADH. Where? At the site of distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. Now the blood will become the hypoosmolar. Not hypoosmolar. It will become isotonic. The osmolality will be normal now because the water increases in the blood. It means there will be normal amount of solutes and normal amount of water now. The water is increased. That's why there will be normal osmolality. This was the point regarding the hyperosmolality and normal osmolality. Now the hypotension. Remember one thing. There are also receptors which are present in the vessels. Here I will show you here. There are some receptors which are present in the vessels, which are called V1 receptors. V1 receptors. These are V1 receptors. When the V1 receptors get stimulated due to the action of ADH, now ADH will bind here. ADH will bind here. As I already told you, ADH is also known as vasopressin. It is the vasoconstrictor. Now, whenever the ADH bind to V1 receptors, the vessels will constrict. Now, I can show you here. Suppose if you will take a pipe, through the pipe, water is flowing, and if you will press the pipe, through the pipe, the water is flowing. When you will press the pipe, the pressure inside the pipe will increase, and there will be rapid water flow. Same condition if you will apply here. If you take this blood vessel here, if there is suppose hypotension, if you will constrict this vessel, the blood flow through this vessel will increase. Same condition if you will apply here. Whenever the ADH binds to V1 receptors, the vessel will constrict. There will be increased blood pressure. Now there was the first hypotension. Due to increase in the blood pressure, the blood pressure will be normalized. This was due to the ADH action on the V1 receptors. Now we will see what will happen if the ADH will increase and what will happen if the ADH will decrease. We will see the hyposecretion of ADH and the hypersecretion of ADH.